What happens when a store goes out of business and customers can't get their items such as dry cleaning or photographs? Have you ever been to a gold party and wondered, did I just get ripped off? Would you like to meet a celebrity in the consumer protection world? Stay tuned for this episode of Consumer Compass. Hello, I'm Eric Friedman, Director of Montgomery County's Office of Consumer Protection. Each month we look at different consumer issues here on the show. Today's show has a theme that seems to crop up again and again: hard times. With the economy in trouble, so are many people's finances. They are looking for other ways to make money. A popular one is to sell gold, which at this taping is selling for more than $1,200 per ounce. You can sell it to dealers, jewelry shop owners, or pawnbrokers, or attend a gold party.
Let us bring the cash to you.
I had a party and I made $1,200.
I got over $350 cash.
Have you ever been to a gold party? It usually goes something like this. The party is hosted at somebody's house and includes food and drink. The guests are asked to bring any unwanted gold, jewelry and trinkets, that old watch you inherited, a broken bracelet. A gold dealer is there ready to A, determine if the gold is pure, and B, weigh it. They then offer payment. You walk away with hard cash. The dealer makes money by sending the gold to a refinery that melts it, removes the alloy, and resells it. The host gets a percentage of total sales. Is this the best way to sell your gold? Well, it depends. As always, it comes down to consumer education. Here's what you need to know. First, remember that the value of the gold changes. Check the price before you go. You can find the price at www.goldprice.org. Second, understand the scales. A common U.S. scale will measure 28 grams per ounce. Jewelers use a different measurement standard called a troy ounce. Gold is measured at 31.1 grams per troy ounce. To confuse it more, there's also penny weights. Make sure the gold is measured and paid using the same standard. Third, know the carats of your gold. Solid gold is 24 carats, so 1 carat equals 1/24 of pure gold by weight. 14 carat is about 58% gold. Dealers have different ways of determining gold value using identifying marks, electronic testing kits, or chemicals. Have it appraised before selling. Dealers at gold parties are only paying you for the carats and weight of the gold. Your jewelry may be worth more than the price when you include workmanship, artistic value, and embedded gems. And finally, make sure the dealer has a license. Any person or business acquiring secondhand precious metals needs a license from both the state and us here at the Office of Consumer Protection. And as of October 2010, a new state law will go into effect that will restrict gold parties. Pawn shops, thrift stores, and auctioneers also require licenses. All transactions are subsequently reported to the Montgomery County Police Department. This law provides the police with a means of checking stolen property reports against the list of secondhand personal property received or sold by dealers. Here's Victor Goodman, who's been in the pawn shop business for 30 years, to explain how pawn shops operate and what consumers need to know.
Not everybody can use a bank. So people need money. They can go to a pawn shop, they can take something that they're valuable, like a piece of gold, piece of jewelry, guitar, musical instruments, things like that, and borrow money on it. They don't have to sell it. Lots of people need money for a week, 2 weeks, and that's all they need it for. So this is quick, it's easy, it's convenient, and it's safe for the customer to come in and do this. And most of the time, the interest is very, very reasonable for a short, small loan. Okay, let's say you want to borrow $150. Well, you're certainly not going to go to a bank and fill out their paperwork and do all that for $150. You have a gold bracelet. Most gold bracelets nowadays are worth $150. Take it to a pawn shop. You borrow your $150. Most pawn shops give you at least a month to come back. You shouldn't deal with anybody that doesn't give you that much time. We give you 2 months here. You have 2 months to come back to pick up your bracelet. Interest is 10%, which comes out to $15 a month. So on a short-term loan, you leave your bracelet here, we hold it, you come back a month later, you pay the 100 plus the 15, you get your bracelet back. So it's that simple and that easy, and it's very safe in a pawn shop. Probably a good pawn shop will have very good security and safer than it is at home. If you decide to lose it or you don't come back at the expiration date, it is ours to try to sell and recoup our money, which we do in our store here. And it's a great place for people to try to buy used merchandise. Look, we have to sell it. And if we can't be competitive and sell it way below a new price, then we're out of business. So it is a good place to shop, but once again, you should have an idea of what you want to pay for an item, check it over, find out their return policy, and be educated about your choice. Okay, so 4 or 5 important tips are, first off, is how long they've been in business. That says a lot about somebody. Of course, you have to go in there, you have to get their terms, you have to get their interest rates, you have to get how long the loan's good for, and it has to all be spelled out on the contract. You have to ask, is your merchandise safe there? Another important thing is you have to feel comfortable when you walk in there, and you have to be treated with respect. Those are the most important things. If any of those aren't true, you should just walk out, because there are pawn shops that will follow all those. And as always, check with the Better Business Bureau or the Consumer Protection Agency and see if they have a record. And the most important thing you need to know before you use a pawn shop is you must have the proper ID. Any shop that does not ask for that, you should not go to. So here are some tips a consumer should use when he goes to a pawn shop to buy something. Most importantly, does it come with a warranty, and what is it? Secondly, look the item over good and test it out in the store if possible. Thirdly, get an idea of what you want to pay for it used, and you can do that by checking on eBay and see what similar items in similar condition are bringing. And that's it. And then make your decision and buy it.
And before we leave this topic, a word of warning. There are companies that ask you to mail in your gold for cash. We've seen complaints about low payouts and heard of consumers who sent in their jewelry and got nothing in return. Make sure you are dealing with a reputable company. So now we're going to look at a unique program here at Consumer Protection called Bert. Who or what is Bert? Bert stands for the Business Eviction Response Team. It's a program designed to protect consumer goods and information in the event of a merchant that's evicted or has gone bankrupt. Here's Administrator Ralph Vines and Sergeant Bill Burdensky to explain more.
At Montgomery County Consumer Protection, we are seeing an increased number of businesses that are either failing or going into bankruptcy, and I think that is primarily due to the downturn in the economy.
I've been with the Sheriff's Office for almost 15 years. I've been supervising the eviction section of the Sheriff's Office for about 3.5 years. My affiliation with Bert is we get orders from the court to do evictions on residences and businesses, and of course when we get one for businesses, what we do is we contact Ralph Vines from the Office of Consumer Protection, and we give him the details as well as what we're dealing with, and try to get the situation resolved with the business before we actually have to go out and do an eviction on the business.
We are seeing primarily 2 types of situations. One is a sheriff's eviction, where the individual who owns the property or the location is due rent they go into court, they obtain an order for payment. If they don't get the payment, then they can go to the sheriff's office. The sheriffs can then schedule for an eviction. So that's a real legal matter where the sheriffs would show up. They then notify the party that they are being evicted. They're allowed to move their personal property off of the location, and then the sheriffs and the property owner or the landlord can then change the locks, and goods left in the store could become the property of now the landlord, who may not have an obligation to you as a customer. It becomes a real complicated matter, and that is why my office, Consumer Protection, got involved in evictions so that we could work with the landlord to ensure items were not set out, not destroyed. And the sheriff's office has been very instrumental with helping us to ensure that consumer goods are saved. Now there is another situation where an individual or business just puts a sign up saying they are going out of business. They can't be successful at that business, and that is not illegal. So an individual can be in financial trouble, either file for bankruptcy or just decide they want to shut down the business. You often see that happen, and they may say price reduction. So it's a little scary because they can reduce the price, may sell all their inventory, and then they could turn around and say, well, because of the going out of business sale, we made enough revenues to stay in business, and thereby we're not going out of business. And then some consumers may think they got a good deal, and of course some consumers may be scammed.
Yes, we are seeing more of an increase in businesses that unfortunately are unable to pay their rent according to their lease. The numbers have gone up the last couple years, and fortunately the Bert team is able to help handle some of those situations and get them taken care of.
In addition to what we would normally call dry cleaners and laundry, we see other businesses having financial trouble. We often get notices from the sheriff's department of automotive repair places that can't pay the rent. So what does a consumer do if their car is in for repair and then next week they show up and the gate's locked because the place has gone out of business? We've had bicycle shops go out of business. We've had secondhand personal property stores that you would probably call things on consignment. And then I recall about 2 years ago, we had a medical facility go out of business, and all the business records were basically set out by the dumpster. Luckily, in that case, the sheriff's office did take a even greater role by taking possession of those business records. We made some contacts and were able to find the owners who came down and took that information back. But we hear often that identity theft sometimes occurs when a business either sets materials out or they don't shred the materials and just discard them in the trash.
As far as the consumer is concerned, their best thing is just to keep an eye out, make sure you use a reputable business, maybe one that's endorsed by the Better Business Bureau, and don't leave your property stay in any establishment too long. If you have cleaning, it's supposed to be picked up on a Tuesday, pick it up on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, things of that nature. You don't want to leave your property at these establishments too long, and that's for any establishment.
We think a greater burden should go on the business to tell consumers if they're going out. Obviously, they can shred their records and do other things to protect consumers. But foremost, if you have a situation where it's a consumer transaction, we are here to assist you, and we're easily reached. We're in Rockville, the Office of Consumer Protection.
Recently, we had to help customers retrieve their clothes when the local dry cleaners, Shamrocks in Aspen Hill, suddenly closed. Check out what happened.
In this particular situation, this was not a business eviction process. We had a few consumers to file a complaint with our office, and upon our investigation, we found out that the cleaners had closed, had filed bankruptcy, had not notified the consumers that their clothing were still there at the cleaners. So further investigation, we located the clothing. A couple colleagues and I retrieved over 200 items of clothing, brought them to our office. Our volunteers got into action and contacted the consumers. Now, many of the clothings were not tagged, the items were not tagged. So the items that were tagged, our volunteers did call those consumers, and we've had many consumers to respond to come in and retrieve their clothing. And we're so fortunate that our office was able to contact these consumers, and very pleased that they were responding and coming in to retrieve their clothing. And they were so happy because they didn't know what happened to their clothing, and some had contacted the police, which referred them to our office as well.
I was a long-time member, customer of Shamrock Cleaners, and I put items in the cleaners, I would say the second week of January of 2010. 2 coats, both were on separate tickets, a black coat, a white coat. I went to the cleaners, I would say the 3rd week of January maybe, to retrieve 1 coat, got the coat, never was told that the cleaners was going to close. Went back the following week to get the second item and discovered that the cleaners had closed. There were a few items in the store. There was no sign outside of the store indicating that they were going to give us our items back or give me my item back. I called, well, had a friend who's a faithful reader of the Gazette. She called me, informed me that there was an article in the Gazette explaining what had happened, and for me to call a particular number, which I did do. Also emailed the Consumer Affairs and received a phone call back from them explaining that they had retrieved 2 shirts that I was unaware that was in the cleaners, but the white coat was not found. So I did lose that item.
I had a call on my answering machine at home. It was sort of vague, and it was a little hard to understand, but it was, I think, the owner who said something about they were closing and would I come pick up my clothes. Well, by the time I got back the very next day, when I was going to the office, I stopped and there was no one there. No signs, no clothes, no nothing. So I kind of gave up, and I had sort of had an inkling that might be what I'd find, and then out of the blue, about a month ago, I received a call from someone, an intern at Consumer Protection, who informed me that they had clothes from Shamrock Cleaners, and one of the articles had my name on it, and if I would like to come by, I could pick it up. So, being that it's across the street from my office, I immediately came by, and sure enough, among all those clothes was my coat, and the beauty of it was the coat had been repaired. I have a new zipper, and it was all clean. And the amazing part was I never expected to get it back, but through the good offices of Consumer Protection, I did, and it's quite amazing to me that I did. I'm just sorry it happened that way, that the cleaners went out of business in such an unfortunate manner and left so many customers bereft and surprised, I think, and disappointed.
I pick it up, my clothes will come here Thursday, I pick it up, my clothes, I find my clothes. Suppose I come 2 days, I pick it up all clothes. I find everything my clothes. Me have that. I say thank you very much for find my clothes. Everything is okay. Now it's expensive here. I don't have money for buying the clothes. Understand? Somebody else give for me the clothes for Christmas. Everything is okay. Say okay, thank you. I come here Thursday, find all clothes. Me help for that one.
The message that our office wants to convey to consumers that if you're doing business with a cleaners or any other business where you're leaving items and you're expected to retrieve it in a certain time frame, make sure you do that, because in this difficult economic times, we're finding that many shops, many businesses are closing, and so you may not have an opportunity to retrieve your items. So it's really important to watch those time frames. If you think that you have some clothing at Shamrock Cleaners, please contact us, or you've left clothing or alterations, please contact our office. We'll be happy to look for the items. Some of the items are tagged, some are not tagged with the consumer's name and telephone numbers. But if you think you've left some clothing at the cleaners, please contact us and we'll be happy to assist you. Thank you.
So our last segment on today's show takes us into the world of broadcast television. We have an Emmy award-winning celebrity here. Liz Crenshaw has been covering consumer issues for NBC for the last 20 years. I've been a guest on her show many times, and I thought it might be fun for her to appear here, kind of turn the tables, as it were. Hey, Liz, thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure, Eric. Thanks for having me.
And I want to note this is an exclusive interview for our cable TV show, Consumer Compass.
I've lived in Montgomery County for 21 plus years, so the answer is who else would I give my exclusive interview to?
Well, that's perfect, because we have lots of questions to find out a lot more about you.
Good.
So, Liz, it seems like you've been with Channel 4 for almost forever.
I actually have been there forever. I like to think I started, when I was 12 years old, but essentially I graduated from Georgetown University. I went up to Syracuse, did a master's up there, and the first job I got out of my master's program was a desk assistant's job at Channel 4 in the fall of 1980. So I have been there 30 years this fall.
Wow. And
yeah, long time.
And you've made a very fascinating transformation from being behind the camera as a producer to being on camera.
Yeah, I had no interest at all in being in front of the camera. I mean, I was a writer, producer. I worked the desk. I dispatched camera crews around the city. I was on the desk when Air Florida crashed. I was there when the Pope was shot. I mean, I was very much a breaking news person. An opening in the consumer unit back in 1982 as a full-time producer came up for Lee Thompson, who was our full-time reporter, and I was Lee's producer for 10 years. In 93, Lee went off to Dateline, and they said, what are we going to do? And I said, give me another reporter. I'm a great producer. I can do this. And they tried a couple of people here and there, and nothing really seemed to stick, and they said, why don't you do it? And I went,
right. Now that's probably pretty unusual for a producer to become the talent on camera.
Yeah, it doesn't happen in television very much. I mean, essentially what happened was television was transforming to a certain extent. I like to say I wasn't tall, I wasn't thin, I wasn't blonde, but I got the job anyway because I knew the material. The thing about consumer reporting, the reason I love it so much is it's not really about what you're saying, it's whether you believe what you're doing. And so we do the kind of work that matters in the community, and I knew it. I knew it cold for 10 years, so going in front of the camera and interviewing folks like you or talking to victims of fraud was easy for me.
Well, Liz, I know there are lots of important things happening around the world, but it seems like these consumer issues really touch people directly.
You know it better than most people. You're on the front lines. You get the complaints. You know when someone's being ripped off by their cable bill or by a water filter salesman or whatever. I get it sort of the same way. People email me, they write to us. I like to say that consumer reporting matters because it affects people where they live. It matters to people whether they're being ripped off. It matters to them whether they're getting a good deal. It matters to them if they don't understand their debit card and how it works. It matters to them if a used car salesman is not giving them all the information that they need. So we like to think at Channel 4 that consumer reporting, when you see my story, you say to yourself, I get it now, or that's not going to happen to me, or I'm going to tell my mother, or I'm going to tell my daughter.
I've always found that the most powerful stories are the ones that use hidden cameras.
It is a way to give the audience a chance of sort of being in on the deal. Of course, we don't use them in Maryland because it's against the rules. We use our hidden cameras mostly in Virginia because we have what we call one-party consent. Hidden camera works because the audience likes to see what the scam looks like while it's happening. Retelling that doesn't work as well as actually seeing the guy make the pitch. You and I just worked on a piece that we call Dirty Business about just the guys that come in and want to clean your ductwork. You pitched the story to me because you thought it was a problem. We found a company in a house, we heard the pitch, and truly it has made a difference. People all over the area write to us and say, thank you, I'm not going to hire that company, or I'm going to know better when I have a company come in what to ask.
So from your vantage point, do you see scams changing or getting reinvented, going high tech? Where do you see the future of scams?
You know, I think it's essentially the same sort of problems. I don't think there's a lot new in the world except in the sphere of the internet. I mean, obviously in my 30 years, we've gone from scams being perpetrated through the mail, door to door, to a majority of scams now being perpetrated both advertising-wise via the internet and also through people's email. I mean, we're doing stories about privacy, we're doing stories about people being pitched things through Facebook, somebody wanting to get you to give them $5,000 because you're stuck in England and you need to get home. I mean, that kind of stuff I've not done before. But it's essentially the same thing. It's lying to someone, or it's not giving them enough information, not disclosing the full terms of the deal, and that's what matters. Government needs to do this sort of stuff too. I mean, I'm not a watchdog officially, I'm just a journalist. That doesn't mean I don't have a role to play, but obviously I believe in the federal government doing its job, and I believe in county and state governments doing their jobs to make sure that consumers are protected to the best of their abilities. I mean, you guys can write regulations and legislation. All I can do is say, look at this problem. What do you want to do about it?
Liz, I know when people think of you, they typically think of that segment that you do, Does It Really Do That?
Right.
Is that your most popular sort of segment you came up with?
It's the most popular segment because it's the one that people remember. I like to say they're going to put Does It Really Do That on my tombstone, and I ask if anyone's watching, please don't do that. Does It Really Do That was born about 8 years ago, just from the advent of infomercials are so popular. People say, oh, I don't buy from infomercials. They buy from infomercials. And what I like to say about infomercials is I love them because they're perfectly produced television, right? Everything works perfectly. The machine always works. The shot's just perfect. Everyone is just like, whoa, this is great, right? What we get to do, and the reason I love doing Does It Really Do That, is we get to take that ordinary product and give it to an ordinary citizen and say, so, use it for a week, use it for a couple of weeks, and I'll come by. And that's what we do. We give them to people, we say, use this, and then show me, does it really do that or not? And the funny thing is to run the infomercial in one screen and show Mrs. Smith trying to use it in the other screen, and it's just, those are some of my favorite stories.
So it's actually different from the way Consumer Reports takes it, and they have scientists check an item out.
Right.
You have real people doing it.
Yes, and I mean, we don't call this a scientific, we're not looking at hundreds of versions of this product. We say, the infomercial folks sell this to you, one person, one product at a time. So we're going to give it to an ordinary person and just see, does it really do that? And it is her opinion or his opinion. It's very clear. We don't pretend that it's more complex than that.
Right. And when you go to parties, do people come up to you and tell you their problems or their consumer gripes?
Yes, people on the street. I mean, I'll be buying raspberries at Giant, and someone will say, are those the best ones to get? Or they'll say, I need to tell you something about what happened to me last week. I mean, it's fine. When my girls were younger and people interrupted me and I was in the middle of something, it was a little more disconcerting. Now, obviously, I have a little more time to myself. My girls are off on their own. But yeah, people do stop. Our best stories, and I'll say this, hopefully someone watching this program will care. Our best stories come from regular folks doing regular things. I mean, my sisters pitch me stories, my mother pitches me stories, my girlfriends pitch me stories, people in the community write all the time. Those are the best ways to get stories because it's what's happening right now to somebody. I had a woman who wrote in yesterday about gift cards. I thought to myself, I thought gift cards were sorted out. I thought we had this worked out, and she had expiration dates and all this kind of stuff, and I thought, you know what? We got to relook at this and see what's happened. That's a good way to get a story.
I guess your viewers are the eyes and ears that can get back to you with information.
And you are my eyes and ears.
Well, it's great working together, and I know your children are grown, as you say, and you have interns that work with you.
Right.
Do you have any advice for the aspiring journalist or getting into the field?
Yeah, I love working with young people who want to be journalists. All I would say to a would-be journalist is you gotta really want to do it. This is not the kind of job that you're gonna walk in the door and someone's gonna hand something to you on a platter. The best stories are the stories that you dig up, that you uncover, that you pay attention to. So you have to be inquisitive, hardworking. The answer is it's hard work, it's not a lot of money. I love it to death. I wouldn't do anything else. I'm glad I've done it for as many years as I have. But I wouldn't take the profession lightly. I always say this to my interns, don't do this unless you really mean it.
Well, Liz, I know we're all very fortunate that you're on the air bringing these important stories to us, and I hope we can continue to work together.
It would be my pleasure. I think partnering with Montgomery County Consumer Protection has been a great boon to my reporting, and I think very helpful to the citizens, so thank you as well.
Great, thanks again. Well, that's it for this episode of Consumer Compass. Please, if you have any questions about the topics we raised today or any other consumer question or problem, don't hesitate to call or come into our offices in Rockville. We're open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, or you can call or email us by going to our website at montgomerycountymd.gov/consumer. I'm Eric Friedman, Director of the Consumer Protection Office. Thanks for watching.
County Cable Montgomery, your information station.